Hi, what you missed the first meeting was the one-step and the two-step equation. So I'm gonna share the whiteboard right now and I'll go over it with you. Let me just minimize this because if I'm gonna start moving my computer, and it's gonna start getting a little bit, let me see. So let me see. We're gonna be going over the steps for the one-step equation. So one-step equation steps. The first step, step number one, we are gonna draw a line across the equal sign. Equal sign. Step number two, we're gonna identify what side is the letter. And finally, our step number three, it's gonna be to move the number from step two, basically from the step where the letters at to the other side. By doing the opposite. By opposite, we mean it's gonna do the opposite of whatever the operation is originally doing. So these are gonna be the steps that we're gonna be taking for the one-step equation. I know it says one-step equation, but we're still gonna add, I'm adding like step number one and step number two. That's something that I added and it makes it easier for students to understand. So one more thing that I wanna say before we move on is that I always start everybody in the same thing. So if this is too easy, let me know. And if this is too hard, let me know. Hopefully this is a perfect starting point and we will see right now. So the first example that we're gonna do, we wanna solve for the letter. So I'm just gonna make it up right now. Let's say we have 3 plus x equals 15. Well, like in this case, some of these we could actually do them in our head, but I still want you to work them out because once we move on to the multi-step equation, these we won't be able to do them in our head. So the first thing that we're gonna do right here is our first step, which says to draw a line across the equal sign. Literally draw your line across the equal sign. Second thing, we're gonna identify what side is the letter. And by what side is the letter, I mean what side is the letter from the line that we just created. So if you see the letter is on this side, which is, that is our left side. I just put a little L at the top right there to represent that our letters on the left-hand side. And I usually circle it, let's see, yeah. So if it was on the right, I'll just put an R on the right and circle it. Those two steps, step number one and step number two, those are steps that you don't have to do them, but it does help at the end. Like once we move on to the multi-step, it'll help you out a lot. So right now we need to get rid of the 3. That's our step number 3. We're gonna move the number from step 2, basically from the left-hand side, in this case to the other side by doing the opposite. So the number that we're gonna get rid of is the 3. If you see, that's the number that we have on the left. Why? Because we want the x by itself. So this 3 we are adding it because it's 3 plus x. We're adding that 3 to the x to get to 15. So opposite of addition is going to be to subtract 3 to both sides. So minus 3, minus 3. The 3's will cancel out. You bring down the x equals. Then our next question that we're going to ask ourselves is, what is 15 minus 3? 15, take away 3, that gives us 12. So our final answer, x is equal to 12. So most of this one-step equation, most of them, we can actually do them in our head. I mean, we don't have to do all that. We could say, wait, 3 plus what gives me 15? Well, I know if I take away 3 from the 15, I get 12. So 3 plus 12 will be 15. And that's exactly how our brain works. But now I just want you to write it out. It's gonna help us out, trust me, once we move on to the multi-step equation. So for right now, we're just gonna go over the one-step and the two-step equation. That's what you missed. So our next example, example number 2, we are gonna have, let's see, 18 equals y minus 5, for instance. So we want to solve for our letter, which honestly, the letter could be any letter in the alphabet. It doesn't have to be X. It's usually just X, but it doesn't just have to be X. I mean, like we have in this example, we have a Y in there. So it could be also a Y. It could be an R. It could be an S. It could be any letter in the alphabet, actually. So right here, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be following our steps. Step number 1 says to draw the line across the equal sign. Let me just change the color right here. Draw a line across the equal sign. We're going to identify what side is our letter. By the side, we mean the line that we just created. What side is it? Is it on the right or is it on the left? In this case, it's on the right-hand side. So let me see if I can do an R. So that's my R. And I just circle it like that. I know it's on the right-hand side. Step number 3 says to move the number from step 2 to the other, from step 2, meaning in this case, it's from the right-hand side to the other side by doing the opposite. So right here, we have Y take away 5. It's minus 5. So since we're taking away, it's a minus. Or we could call it a negative. Honestly, in math, minus and negative means the same thing. So opposite of a minus or opposite of a negative will be either to add or positive. I mean, it's the same thing. So that means that we're going to be putting plus 500. Plus 5, plus 5. The 5s are going to cancel out. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So that cancels out, and we're going to bring down our letter, which is our Y. Our Y equals, what is 18 plus 5? So 18, if we add 5, that will give us 23. So Y equals 23 in this case. One more thing that I do want to say is that if our numbers get really big, we could always use a calculator. When you take your test, you will be able to use a calculator. It doesn't matter if you're going to do the GED or the high set. Both of them will actually allow you to use a calculator. Now, I think you can't take your own calculator. The calculator will be provided for you when you take the tests. So as example number 1, we did an addition, which opposite was a subtraction. Example number 2, it was subtraction originally, which opposite is going to be addition. Now we're going to move on to, we want to do a multiplication and a division. So example number 3, let me see. Let's put it up here. Let me change the color. Example 3. So for example number 3, we want to do a multiplication. Now, before we start, whenever you see a number right next to the letter, like this case, let's say 3x. Oh no, let me not use 3 because I've been using 3 a lot. Have I used 6? Let's say 6x. 6x equals 72, like that. Whenever we get a number next to the letter, like in this case, the 6x, that means to multiply 6 times x. Opposite of multiplication is going to be division. So that's what we're going to be doing. So that we're no longer going to be using the x as a symbol for multiplication. The reason why is because once you move on to like pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, and so on, we use a lot of x as an unknown value. And we need to figure out what the value of that x is. So we have it all together right there. That means it's gonna be to multiply. So let me go on. And the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna draw a line across the equal sign. So draw a line across the equal sign. Second thing is to identify what is our letter. In this case, our letter is on the left-hand side. So we're gonna put an L and I'm circling. So this actually, it helps us out because then it's going to help us out to identify what side is our letter. What do we need to get rid of? In this case, we have to get rid of that 6. That 6 has to go to the other side. So 6x, remember we said it was to multiply. Opposite of multiplication is going to be to divide. Whenever you get a fraction in math, fraction means to divide. So actually for this one, what you will see is a line under it. So we're going to make it a fraction. Whenever I see a fraction or whenever we have a fraction in our columns, what I automatically do is I put the 2 little dots. Let's see if I can do it right here. I put 2 dots, like one at the top and one at the bottom, and that's gonna help me to remember, oh wait, this is division. So we're gonna be dividing top and bottom by a number. And the number that we're gonna put under it, it's either gonna be the 6 or the 72. So at this point, if you're like, wait, which is the number that goes at the bottom? Refer back to step number 2. What side is our letter? In this case, it's on the left. So that's the number that's actually gonna be going at the bottom, which is the 6. So 6 goes right here and 6 goes under the other side. One thing I forgot to mention is that this line that we've made across the equal sign, think about that it's a mirror. So whatever you do on one side, it's gonna reflect onto the other side. So if you see, we have the same thing in green on both sides of that line. Because this is an equal equation, we want to keep it equal. So whatever you do on one side, you have to do it on the other side just to keep it equal. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times 6 is just x. So what I'm going to say right here, this just cancels out. I usually just say that. I mean, it's 1. 1 times x would be x. So just say it cancels out. 72 divided by 6. So you could do either the long division, the 72 over 6. 6 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. We subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1. We bring down the 2. 6 goes into 12 2 times. 2 times 6 is 12. Subtract that and 0. You could do it like that. You could put it in the calculator, or if you know the multiplication table of the 6, then you can know that it's 12. Whichever way, I mean, there's no right or wrong way. Honestly, I actually do encourage my students to use the calculator as much as possible, because when you take your test, it's a time test. I don't want you to spend too much time in one problem. So for this one, it will be 12. You can just put into the calculator. If you do put into the calculator, you always start with the top number. The top number in a fraction is called the numerator. The bottom numbers are denominator. So we're going to start off with the 72 divided by the 6. 72 put into the calculator divided by 6 will give us 12. And then I will be sending you this video. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Example number 4. So let's sorry, I just realized, I'm like, wait a minute, am I recording it? Yes, I was. Okay, example number 4. Let me change the color on the column. We haven't used brown. Example number 4. So this one, it's going to be a fraction. Let me just put like x. Where's my x? X equals. And let's see, it is 2. Let's say 6. Okay, so there is our problem right there. X over 6 equals 24. So this is our problem. Automatically, I see a fraction. I'll put my 2 little dots. So one right there, one at the top, one at the bottom, just to represent division. So first thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna go over our steps. First thing, draw a line across the equal sign. So literally draw a line across the equal sign. Second thing is to identify what side is our letter. In this case, the letter is on the left-hand side. So that means we want to get rid of that 6 that's on the left-hand side. The way we're going to do that is by doing the opposite of whatever the operation is doing. Originally, right now, we have 6 over 6. So, sorry, x over 6. X over 6 means x divided by 6. Opposite of division is going to be to multiply. So we're going to be multiplying. I'm going to put a dot in the middle. It should be like a big dot right here. You know what? Let me go and draw my dot because I can't do it. So whenever you have a dot like this, like a big dot, I call it, These mean to multiply. So remember we said we are no longer going to have the X to symbolize multiplication. What you will see is you're going to see a dot. You're either going to see a dot like this, or if it's two numbers and you're multiplying, you can see them in parentheses as well. So we're going to multiply both sides by the number that's on the left-hand side, which is the 6. So I'm going to put a 6 right here. I'll put another 6 over here. The 6 are actually going to cancel out. So you get X equals, and then 24 times 6, that should be 140 something, 144. For that one, I used my calculator, okay? So, but then I thought about it, I'm like, wait, 24 is close to like a quarter, but I'm just taking away a penny. That's so much work. I mean, you don't want to do all that in the test. What you want to do is spend the least amount of time in each column just so you can move on and you have enough time to finish the test. So we did example number 1 was adding, opposite of addition was subtracting. Example number 2 was originally a subtraction problem, opposite of that was addition. Example number 3 was originally a multiplication problem, so opposite of that was a division. And example number 4 was a division originally, so opposite of it was to multiply. Next thing, before we move on to the 2-step, what I went over as well was how do we know if we add or we subtract positive and negative numbers, and what is our answer if we multiply and divide positive and negative numbers. So let's go on to our next slide. So first thing, how to do, let me change my color on the font. You know, if we subtract positive and negative numbers. So we're going to add if you have the same sign. For instance, if we have a positive 3 and a positive 6, that's gonna, no, let's make it a 7. That's gonna give us positive 10 because we're adding them. 3 plus 7 is 10. If we have negative 3 and negative 7, that's still gonna be 10, but that 10 is gonna be a negative. So if we're gonna add, if you have the same sign, and I forgot to put right here, and you're gonna keep the sign. So like it was the same number, negative 3, negative 7, it was a negative 10, and then positive 3 and positive 7 gives us positive 10. What about if we have a positive and a negative? So that's when we're gonna be subtracting. So we're gonna subtract if you have opposite signs, and you're gonna keep the sign from the highest number. For instance, I'm still gonna be using the positive, the 3 and 7, so I'm gonna make just one positive, the other one negative, and then the other way around where the 3 is negative 3 and the 7 is positive. So we're gonna see the difference between each one of these. On the first one, then positive 3, negative 7. So we're gonna subtract. 7, take away 3, that gives us 4. But according to our rule, we're gonna keep the sign from the highest number. Between the 3 and the 7, the highest one is a 7, it's a negative. So that 4 is gonna be a negative 4. For the next one, we have a negative 3 and a positive 7. Again, opposite signs. So that means we're going to subtract. 7 take away 3, that will be 4. And we're going to keep the sign from the highest number, which is between the 3 and the 7. The highest one is 7, and it's a positive, so that's a positive 4. Now, right here in math, you won't see it like that, how I have positive 4. I mean, I did put it over here just so we can see, oh, we have a positive 3 and a positive 3, just to emphasize it. But when you are taking a test or any column, you're actually not going to see a positive 4 right there if it's the first number or if it's the answer. You're just going to see it as a 4, as a positive 4. So between comma, as a positive 4 like that. So this is to know if we add or we subtract. Just remember, same sign, we add, opposite sign, subtract, keep the sign from the highest number. The second one that we're gonna go over is to multiply and divide positive and negative numbers. So I'm gonna go to a different slide. So what is our answer gonna be? Is our answer gonna be a positive or is our answer gonna be a negative? So multiply, and divide positive and negative numbers. It's basically gonna be the same rules for both of them, okay? Let me see, when you multiply, we have a positive times, I'm gonna use the little star as times. A positive is gonna equal to a positive. A negative, negative times a negative is gonna equal to a negative. A positive, where am I at? Times a negative is equal to a negative. And a negative times a positive equals to a negative. Wait a minute. Where am I at? Right here. This was supposed to be a positive. Okay. So for multiplying, if you have the same sign, you see how we have the plus and the plus, that's going to be a positive number. If we have negative times a negative, that's also going to be a positive number because it's the same sign. And if we have opposite sign, in this case, it doesn't matter which one's the highest number. If we have opposite signs, our answer will be a negative. And it will be the same rule for division. I'm just trying to see where my division symbol's at in my computer. So for division, I'm gonna use the little line to represent a fraction because I can't find the division. So I'm gonna say a positive divided by a positive is gonna equal to a positive. A negative divided by a negative is gonna equal to a negative. A positive divided by a negative equals, and I did the same thing, the same mistake right here. It's a negative and a negative divided by a positive equals a negative. Let me just put spaces in between just so it could line up the same. Okay. So if you see, it's basically the same thing. I mean, if we have two positive, the answer will be positive regardless if we're multiplying or we're dividing. Same thing, if we have two negatives, the answer will still be positive even if we multiply or we divide. And if you have opposite signs, it doesn't matter which is the highest number, our answer will always be a negative. So that's one way to remember these rules. The second way to remember them is honestly, just put it into your calculator. The calculator will tell you if the answer is positive or negative as long as you put it in correctly. If you have two negative numbers, put negative, like for instance, if you put -3 times -2 equals, and it should give you a +6. If we have +3 times -2 equals, the answer will give us -6. Regardless how you do it in the calculator will still give you the correct answer. That's the second way to do it. Now I have another way, which this is called the Dorito Man, and a teacher came up with this. I'm not gonna take credit for it, but she came up with it. Oh, I'm going to erase this one. Let me see if I could draw it out. So we literally have like a triangle that looks like a Dorito. That's why it's called the Dorito Man. So right there, let's see if I could draw a Dorito. And we have negative, a negative. Oh, my mouse is going a different direction. So a negative, negative, and a positive. what this is going to help us out is to solve for a problem. Let's say we have -3 times 2. If we go into the rules, we have a negative and a positive, where we have a negative right here and a positive multiplying, our answer should be -6. If we go on to the Dorito Man, this one will actually help you out for multiplication and division. What you do is you circle what you have. We have a negative right here, so circle a negative. It doesn't matter which one you're going to circle. You can circle either one. And this 2, remember we said if it's a positive, it doesn't have anything, so I'm just going to put it a positive right there so you can see it. That's an invisible positive. So we have it right here. Our answer will actually be whatever we didn't circle, which is on the outside, the negative. Therefore, our answer will be negative. And then you just multiply out the numbers. 3 times 2 is 6, -6. When you do these, you just have to be a little bit careful because actually the negative actually does matter. It matters because let's say if it was like -3,000. It's not the same thing as having a negative balance on your bank account, like -3,000 versus having $3,000 in your account. It's pretty much a different scenario. So that's why the positive and the negative actually matters a lot. And your test, when you take your test is multiple choice. So one option will be +6, the other option will be -6. Even though you got the 6 correct, we just have to make sure that is it a positive or is it a negative. So you just have to be really careful on that. So if you have questions, just let me know and hopefully I can answer them. Let me stop sharing.